It's full time.
Hello and welcome to Full Time, brought to you by AIA Vitality. I'm Shane Crawford, and once again I'm left all alone on a Sunday night. My roving reporter is still up in Queensland, having a fantastic time on the Gold Coast. There he is, Ayrton. Woolley, come on in. How are you?
G'day, Crawf. Going very well, thank you. Had a nice weekend, actually. Watched some local footy yesterday and then caught up with all the results today, so plenty happening.
And what about a swim or a bit of sunbaking?
I think I actually got a little bit sunburned in the past few days. It's been 22, 23, sunny, not much cloud cover. So, yeah, look, I'm trying not to talk about it too much because I understand what's going on back there, but certainly very appreciative to be up here, that's for sure.
Well, we're in lockdown in Melbourne, and there was a hurricane and a storm of all sorts today. So, yeah, things are going beautifully. Hey, the round so far, we're going to launch in and have a look at what's going on over the weekend. We had some great games of footy, and it all started with the Mighty Pies getting up over the Cats at Optus Stadium over there in Perth. The Bulldogs were awesome against the Bombers. The Brisbane Lions were fantastic through the midfield, really shared responsibility and showed GWS how to play. Gold Coast continued on in their very good form. Richmond, are they back? They thumped North Melbourne by 54 points. Port Adelaide today in an absolute thriller. Wow, Robbie Gray kicking a goal after the siren. What a star he is. And Melbourne and the Hawks. Well, the D's are back. The D's destroyed the Hawks. And I think that's where we're going to start, Ayrton, because I'll tell you what, I didn't want to talk about this game, but we're going to have to. It wasn't good. The D's were up and about early. They thumped the Hawks, and that's been the real worrying sign for the Hawks this year, is when they've lost really well. Max Gawn was just awesome through the middle, gave first use to Viney, Petracca. The list goes on, but they played with great confidence today. I'm not sure if you saw the game, but they just took the game on. They linked up beautifully well. They're connecting with their forward line, whereas a few weeks ago on the show we said they've got great issues. We know that they're trying, but that's not good enough, especially with the list they've got. And their connection with the forward line now seems to be superb, although Hawthorn's defensive setup was pretty ordinary. It was like Swiss cheese. There was holes everywhere. But have a look at Max Gawn. Not only his hit-outs, but he's getting plenty of footy around the ground, in the forward line, in the defensive end. He's just an absolute superstar. And Christian Petracca, well, I want to talk about him later in the show, but he's just dominant. No matter where he plays, he's having a great influence. And I'm not sure if you saw the game, but they were awesome.
Yeah, certainly, Crawford. I was a bit worried that we might not see you tonight after that performance from Hawthorn this afternoon. I guess they'd had a pretty tough draw to start the season, but this would have been a game they would have at least expected to be competitive. It does raise some question marks about some guys in particular, given they've got an ageing list.
Yeah, it does. And unfortunately, the stoppages and the centre bounces, they're just getting dominated. They're not having any influence. And that's obviously where the game starts. So at the moment, you've got Mitchell, you've got Warple and O'Meara, and I just don't think they've got any line breakers. And if you go back to the successful sides when they were winning their premierships, they had Sam Mitchell, they had Jordan Lewis, they had Hodge, but they would never start them in the middle together, even though they were pretty much three real sort of hard at the ball bulls. They always had a nice little mix. They'd have some type of running type of player floating through there who could really break the lines. Bruce was one of them. They'd have Cyril Rioli float through there. And at the moment, they just don't seem to have their mix. They didn't get their hands on the footy because Max Gawn kept tapping it down first. But they're just not exploding from the stoppages like a lot of other teams. And that, for me, is a real worrying sign. So maybe it's time for the Hawks to go, do you know what? Maybe we won't make the finals this year. It's time to get some youngsters into the side. Let's give them some great exposure. Play some players who can really break the lines. CJ there, the young Sudanese kid, plays across half-back. He can really run. He's unbelievably athletic. He's explosive. Maybe it's time to give him a real opportunity. You've got Jarman Ippy, who's probably almost due, ready to come back after having a knee injury. Finn McGuinness is a good young kid, plays through the middle. So maybe it's time to give some exposure to some of the younger ones, just to give them that time to find their feet. understand what it's like to play on some good players and hopefully develop into the stars of the future. But real worrying signs. And the biggest thing today is guys like Stratton and Burgoyne. There was a lot of two-way running, and I just don't think it was up to scratch. So they've got a lot of work to do. They've been amazing players for a long, long time. But unfortunately, the Demons made a lot of the older players for the Hawks really look like old men today.
Well, I was going to ask you about their future, and particularly this season, Crawf, given, I mean, they've won 3 games, so have Melbourne. Melbourne have leapfrogged them on the ladder. But as far as you're concerned, do you think finals is out of the picture, or at least even if they did make it, they wouldn't be having much of an impact this season?
No, it's not out of reach yet. They're playing the Swans next week, so there's a little bit of hope there that they can chalk up another win. But they're just not getting the run through the middle like they used to be able to. Even Smith and Scully, they're just not breaking lines. So they've got to find a way. So we know Alistair Clarkson's a great coach. He has been a great coach for a long, long time, but I think this is going to be his biggest challenge is trying to, I suppose, put the jigsaw puzzle back together and find a way, especially with an ageing list. But he's a master. He's done a great job. But today, the Demons, all credit to them, they made Hawthorn look like a very average side.
Well, on Clarko, Jeff Kennett made some comments in the past few days about Clarko's future. He is contracted to the club until the end of 2022, and Jeff Kennett said that basically Clarko wouldn't be sacked. There'd be a discussion about his future, at which point they'd make a mutual decision. Do you think he is the man to lead them into the next phase, whatever that is, Crawf, or do you think at some point they may need to look elsewhere?
Well, if you're going to rebuild, you've got to start playing a lot of young kids. And to Alistair Clarkson's credit, he's been able to patch and grab players from other sides for a long, long time and really sort of get the best out of them. You're talking about Brian Lake, you're talking about Gibson, who you're talking about Burgoyne. A lot of players have come in and really understood their role, but more importantly, got the most out of themselves. But right now is a huge test, because when you have young talent come through, at some stage you've got to bite the bullet and you've got to give them time and exposure at that level. And I reckon right now, especially going into next week's match against the Swans, who are very young, and they're in that stage right now where they're just throwing some young kids pretty much in the mix and saying, go on, stand on your own 2 feet and try and work your way through. I think right now, with the Hawks, I think it's time to pull that trigger. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's, 3 or 4 changes next week, and it's a real new, fresh look Hawthorn side and a side to work towards the end of the year.
Well, probably not for the last time this season. Alistair Clarkson was asked about his future post-game, and particularly about those comments made by President Jeff Kennett.
A lot of people sort of had their say this week about where the club's at and whether you'd have the energy for a rebuild. Do you have a sort of response to that talk that's been going on?
Yeah, I spoke about it yesterday, so watch that press conference.
Where do you think the list is at in terms of...
Spoke about that yesterday too, mate, so you go to that conference as well.
Well, there was another really exciting match this afternoon with Port Adelaide defeating Carlton by 3 points, denying the Blues their second straight victory. And it all unfolded in the final few frantic moments. The Power had a few shots on goal. Charlie Dixon hit the post, Robbie Gray missed, and then he handballed to a teammate who also missed. And then he got the ball again around 40 metres out and slotted that winning goal after the siren. Crawf, what was going through his mind, do you reckon, at that stage?
Well, it was an unbelievable kick. The siren goes. It didn't faze him one bit. And you know what? He's a superstar, and he's a superstar for a reason, because he remained unbelievably composed, and it was just the most perfect kick. You could see as soon as it released off his foot, he wanted to put his hand up, but he thought, no, I'll just back it off a touch. But he knew that was heading straight through. So he's definitely the one you want to have with the football, especially when the match is on the line. He did have it probably about 3 or 4 minutes earlier, and he passed it off to his teammate only about 10 metres out with a handball, who missed. Can't believe these AFL footballers miss from 10, 15, 20 metres out. It's just ridiculous and shouldn't happen, especially when you're a professional. But a great effort from Port Adelaide. They were challenged by the Blues. The Blues were really good. The best thing about the Blues, even though they didn't win, is they had a great win last week, and they really backed it up against a very good side, a side that everyone's tipping to win the premiership. So that was a real positive. And from Port Adelaide's point of view, they found a way to win. And that's what really good sides do. Even when they're a touch off, They just hang in there, and they kept peppering away. They obviously had opportunities to kick goals, but this was a great game. Two really improved sides and two sides that are going somewhere, and Robbie Gray, what an absolute superstar, wearing the great number 9. What a champion.
Yeah, favourite of yours, of course, Crawford. Just on Carlton, I mean, a really cruel blow for them, particularly on the back of last week, but it does show that they are going in the right direction, certainly, doesn't it? Do you think they'll be around the mark of the 8, I guess, later in the season?
Yeah, they've still got a lot of work to do, but I'm loving, especially after last week, the way they backed it up, and the games that they have lost this year, early on, they've been totally blown away in the first quarter. So the positive is if they can stay in the match by the end of the first quarter, there's every chance they're going to win the match. So some really positive signs. They're not relying on Cripps to do it all. They're sharing the load, and that's what you want from a really good team coming forward. So I'm sure the Blues supporters, even though disappointed, would be very proud, and I think the signs are extremely positive for the mighty Blue Baggers.
Well, as you can imagine, Ken Hinkley was certainly a very happy man after the match.
We started, both teams started really well and then became a real arm wrestle, but the way we fought it out as a footy team, there's something about the team at the moment and the boys' belief in themselves and their resilience. I mean, we're 2 down, back-to-back travel games, we were up at, without making any big deal, we were up at 5 and we're getting up on the plane and coming up to play in beautiful weather, but 25 degrees. There was a few things going against us, and then Robbie Gray. You never underestimate what the champs of the game will do, and normally the bigger the moment, the bigger they get. I've been lucky to be around a lot of great players, and Rob fits in that category of players, I have no doubt about that. And, you know, I don't know whether I thought he'd kick it, but I was bloody pleased he did.
Absolutely.
Ken Hinkley there, obviously a very relieved man after that result, Crawford. Plenty of storylines coming out of the round. What have you highlighted?
All right, here we go. We're going to jump into my 4 points from the round. We're going to start with the courage shown by a lot of players. It was incredible. We saw Hayden from North Melbourne try and kill himself, and I tell you what, he earned a lot of respect by the way he went about it. Walsh from the Blues, we saw Rampy the other day get smashed but jump back up. English from the Bulldogs, a young ruckman. He's certainly going somewhere, which is awesome to see. We love the young ruckman coming through. A lot of people saying, oh, he's the best young ruckman coming through for a long, long time. Judge him after this week when he takes on Witts from the Gold Coast, who's in probably the top 4. He's probably in the best form of his life. Judge him after this week. Don't jump the gun there. Gary Ablett, we wish him all the very best. I saw a beautiful photo of his with him at the airport and his son Levi. We know that he's come back for a few weeks. We wish you all the best, Gary, and also we can't wait to see you back out there playing some good football. And Ayrton, I want to talk about my new number 1 in AFL football. Firstly, from your point of view, give me your top 3. I'm sorry, I've just thrown this straight at you, but give me your top 3 players in the AFL at the moment.
Jeez, Crawford, that is a tough question. Well, Lachie Neale, I think, has to be up there just on the consistency that he has shown so far this year. Brodie Grundy, you'd probably have up there, but he and Max Gawn are again really fighting for that sort of spot. And outside of that, it is quite difficult. I think you've got a few midfielders, perhaps no forwards that have been impressing as they once were. So maybe I'll just stick with the 2 and so I don't embarrass myself. No. It's
all subjective. So, yeah, whatever you think. That's well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to throw one up right now that's probably going to get everyone turning in their seats, because I reckon Christian Petracca right now is the number 1 player in the AFL. And this is the reason. The Demons have struggled this year. They're starting to find a bit of form, but he has been a real standout for them. The way the ball's been delivered into that forward line, he's been playing a lot of half forward, but also pushing up into the midfield. I just think his impact on the game has been outstanding. I think he's the new bull. I think he's gone past Dustin Martin. Because what's actually happening, and you've got to watch him, once he gets the footy, he's drawing 2, 3, 4 opponents towards him. He's taking him on. He's still making good enough decisions to then pass the ball on. He's taking spectacular marks. He's laying great tackles. He's delivering the ball inside 50. He's kicking goals, and he's dominating through the middle with Max Gawn every time he goes in there. I know I might be jumping the gun, but this year so far what he's produced is some absolute first-class footy, and I reckon the way he's going, for me at the moment, he is my number one, and he's my first pick if I'm putting a team together.
Big statement there, Crawford.
Do you know who he plays for? He plays for the Melbourne D's.
I thought you said... I thought I heard you say that you had him past Dustin Martin now. Now, come on.
I'm just saying this year's form, if you're looking at this year's form and what he's doing around the stoppage, today, some of the stuff that he did when he's running flat out and he had Hawthorn opponents around him, and his explosiveness to then get another 2 or 3 metres, and at times when the players were coming towards him, do you know what he said? Come on. Bring it on. And he was just weaving his way through. He is in rare form. Very hard to stop at the moment. I'm sure all the coaches are scratching their head thinking, how do we stop Christian Petracca? And when he goes into the centre bounce, Max Scorn goes, where do you want it? Bang. And then even if he's got 2 or 3 all over him, he manages to flick it out, and he's creating so much space for the Demons players and his midfield to work into. So he's added another string to his bow. He's going to the middle. He's hitting the scoreboard. He's dominating through the half-forward arc. And I just think, at the moment, for me, he's the number one player in the competition.
Love it, Crawford. Great to see him too, fulfilling that potential that saw him taken with pick number 2 behind Paddy McCartan all those years ago. Well, it's time now for the opposite end. Who have you got in the gun this week? It's the Sunday roast.
Well, the North Melbourne Football Club, what is going on? The season started so well. They seemed to be playing with great chemistry. They had good leadership out there. And then all of a sudden, what's gone wrong? They just don't look like themselves of 4 or 5 weeks ago. So big worrying concerns. But I'm more concerned about playing injured players. A few weeks ago, Ben Cunnington played, had a back injury, couldn't get through the game. And you don't want to carry players in because it hurts you. You need everyone to contribute right throughout. And then this week, Zeeble had a hamstring injury, missed a few games, comes back in, goes out in the first quarter. That is not good enough. So, unfortunately, North Melbourne, you need to lift. You cannot play injured players, especially the older types, and especially when they go out of the game so early in the match. Not good enough. They lacked Zeeble's leadership all game. They looked a bit of a rabble at times, even around centre bounces and stoppage work. They were all huddled together on one side. It was like watching the Oz kick. So a big whack to the North Melbourne Football Club. They need to lift. They need to get these decisions right. And if they can't play, it's just a great opportunity to bring in a youngster, see what they can produce and see where they're at. But at the moment, Cunnington and Zeeble, 2 massive outs and 2 bad decisions they've made, and it's looking like they're getting egg all over their face.
Geez, aren't you fired up tonight, Crawford?
Not really, but it's not good enough. There's enough pressure on these players as it is to play from week to week. When you've got a hamstring injury and then you reappear and you go out in the first quarter, that is not good enough. That's what I call mismanagement. It's not good enough. And the same with Cunnington. North Melbourne are better than that. And we've seen it over the last few years. They've found a way to be a really competitive side. This year, it's making them look like a bit of a joke. It's not good enough. And you shouldn't accept it, supporters. Don't accept players not contributing throughout a whole match after having an injury and then turning up, putting the boots on, saying, yeah, I can play. It just cost the team massively. Jack Zeeble's a star. Ben Cunnington's a star. But if they're not fit enough to play, don't play.
Yeah, certainly not the only bit of injury management that's been put under the microscope in recent weeks, of course, with Freo as well, who had Nat Fyfe miss just the 1 game with a hamstring before he missed the derby, or the derby as they call it, between West Coast and Fremantle. But they've got a match tomorrow night, Monday night football. It's Adelaide up against St Kilda. We'll have a little look at that match. Taylor Walker back for the Crows. What do you think about that match, Crawford?
Well, it's good that Taylor's back, especially in front of the home crowd and an oval that he's very familiar with. Seedsman's, I think, is a really important link player. I couldn't understand why he was out. I don't think he was injured. I think he was dropped a few weeks ago. But it's good to see him back in because he can really become that 60, 70-metre player once he gets the ball and runs and carries. Sloan going out, well, that's a huge out. The Saints, well, I'll tell you what, the Saints, very disappointing last week. Made a few horrendous blues towards the end of the match, but I would be expecting them to win. It's not going to be easy because Adelaide are a different side at home. So the Saints want to make sure they're switched on. They didn't get their run and gun game going last week, especially in the second half. So that's one thing they'll be focusing on. The Saints should win. If I had to give you a margin, about 20-odd points. But I think Adelaide will be highly competitive back home for the second time of the year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Crows might jag this one. But Ben Long, of course, out with suspension. Paddy Ryder back for the Saints. And they've got a debutant too, Ryan Burns, and a really great moment during the week, Crawford, where he was in the team meeting, just minding his own business when Brett Ratton said they're going to start getting some families up at the end of each team meeting just to say hello online or on Zoom. And for Ryan Burns, he saw his parents up on the screen, but at that stage he didn't know he was going to debut. And then Brett Ratton said, well, while you're here, guys, your son's playing. So special moment. We get to see a lot of that stuff, but can't get enough of all the debutants this weekend. We saw some great ones, of course, with Cody Waitman as well for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, and a few weeks ago everyone was saying that footy's dead and it's boring, but I tell you what, there's some great games on the weekend. There'll be some great games coming up next week, starting with the Gold Coast. We're loving them on a Thursday night, so we're very, very lucky. We've finally found a way to score some goals, to get the ball moving reasonably fast through the middle, and it's good to see all the coaches are saying, yes, let's try and kick some more goals. So footy's alive and well, even though it's up in Queensland and Western Australia and not in Victoria.
Well, thanks again, Crawford. Great to talk to you again tonight. That's all we've got time for on Full Time, brought to you by AIA Vitality. And as you said, can't wait for that Thursday night clash between the Suns and the Bulldogs next week.
Hey, what's that? I've just... breaking news, Ayrton. You're going to have to stay there till December now. So all the very best. If you want me to walk your dog, I'm very happy to once Corona shuts down here.
I do have a cat, actually, Crawford. My partner at home, she's not all that thrilled about being in lockdown by herself with the cat for company, but she's going to have to deal with it, unfortunately. I'd love to stay up here, put it that way.
I've got a feeling the cat would probably be better company. All the best, mate. Have a great week.